Oh, it's so good to be here. I can't tell you how exciting it is to be back in Tyler. I have not been back to Tyler since we moved away. I have not obviously been back to Marvin. But when I left, then Mayor Barbara Bass gave me a key to the city. So it works. You all let me back in. I appreciate that very much. As Doug mentioned, our daughter Rachel gave birth to our precious, wonderful grandson Jackson. She is married to an OBGYN in the Army, and so they're stationed right in Honolulu, which sounds really exotic and wonderful. It is way, way too far away from grandparents, I can tell you that. But Susan doesn't care, and we've spent so much money, she has, flying back and forth. But it's such a blessing. Sam also, by the way, I got to tell you, that guy can preach. Sam Robbins is a preacher. So 25 years old, the young guy is something else. I'm so impressed with him. And I can just tell you, when we lived in Tyler and Sam Robbins was our son in those days, I never knew whether or not Sam was ever going to actually get out of Tyler without being in a box buried somewhere, because there's a passage of Scripture in the book of Deuteronomy that says if your teenage son continues to fail to obey his parents, you take him outside the city gates and stone him to death. I used to dream of that so often. And of course, Susan's here. I appreciate Susan being with me. She's been with me for 31 years now. We've been a lot of places together. If you get a chance to talk to Susan tonight, I hope you will, but she'll just go on and on and on about how great I am and how glad she is to be married to me. It's like, so don't get her started on me. You'll be here all night long. Some time ago, Doug asked me if I would come and speak, and I said I'd love to, and I said, well, Doug, tell me, I'm not familiar with the eternal flame. We didn't have that when I was there. And he said, oh, John, you know, it's the kind of these are my words, kind of non-sexy stuff you have to do in the church, seal the brick and seal the windows and HVAC and sewage and everything else. And I thought of you when I thought of all of that. And I thought, yeah, it makes sense to me. Sewage, John Robbins, he'd be great for that. So, Doug, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it. So, I do hope my name is on the sewage pipe when it's put in. You know, I was thinking about when I was here, all the things that happened. I mean, the good things, the difficult things, all the challenges. You know, you look back nostalgically on places you served and the people you knew, and just like every church, there were challenges along the way. Not everybody loved me, but it was a blessing for me to be here in so many different ways. And I thought, when I was here, I was reminiscing. If I'm going to talk about the facilities and all those kind of things, what happened when I was at Marvin? We refurbished the youth floor, the children's wing, Hurd Auditorium, the hub. We created Horton Place, workout facilities, office complex, choir room, sanctuary, entrance. Because my office, you remember, Mike Dent remembers the office over there. A lot of this Mike Dent actually put underway before he left, and I just got to reap the benefits of that. But it was a great blessing. I so desperately wanted carpet to be in Pirtle Hall. I tried that many, many times. As I can see, Doug Baker hasn't succeeded with that any more than I did. And I guess you don't need carpet after all. But that was always my big deal. But Marvin for us houses, like it does for you, so many memories and relationships. I was thinking back. You remember Pastor David Brown? Do you all remember Pastor Brown? I was thinking about that. I have videos of that whole encounter. We were on Religion and Ethics News Weekly a couple of times, which was a show that used to be on PBS. That was voted the second most popular show in the history of Religion and Ethics News Weekly when they came to Marvin. Can you imagine that? That show is no longer on television, but nevertheless. I think about Jimmy Fortune from the Statler Brothers when he came, Richard Foster, the great Christian author, Charlie Waters from the Dallas Cowboys was here. Remember Charlie Waters was real good looking. I'm sure he still is. And all the women older than me were just fawning over him. That was just really interesting that night. He came and spoke. Doug Baker and I went to Africa together. Melissa Brigman went on that trip. William Willimon was here. Bible in 90 Days was a big deal. Then Wednesday night Bible study. We tried a Saturday evening service of worship for a while. That eventually was defunct. So not everything was tremendously successful. We had Sunday night worship when I was here for some period of time. And I remember being in the chapel one night, just preaching my heart out and in the back of the chapel, a guy came in carrying a pizza. And I was preaching, and he said, "Hey, dude, where does this pizza go? Where's the youth floor?" And I stopped my sermon, and I said, "Oh, here, okay, here. Go down this hall here, and you go upstairs and all that." And he said, "All right, thanks, dude." And he left. And I just went back to preaching, and I went, "Really? Did that just happen?" So I remember the pizza guy. I'm sure he's probably a PhD by now, but... I think about how important this place is and the sacred ground that we call Marvin United Methodist Church. It really is sacred ground. You think about the sanctuary built in 1890. Nobody alive has ever known Tyler, Texas, without Marvin United Methodist Church as a focal point in this community. The thousands of baptisms and all the kids who have been confirmed in this church and all of the weddings and all of the funerals and all of the sermons preached and all the anthems and everything else, it's just extraordinary for me to think about. And I think about some of the people that are on staff here. Doug Baker, when I was leaving, Bishop Huey called me and said, "We just can't seem to find anybody to come to Marvin. I just can't seem to find anybody that's suitable for Marvin. I've interviewed all these people." I said, "Bishop, you've got the guy already. He's already here, Doug Baker." She said, "Well, do you think Doug can do it?" I said, "Well, of course he can do it. I've been gone 6 years. He's still here. You're doing all this great work. He is the guy. He is the one that pulled it off," and I was right. So I think about Jerry Giles one Sunday morning. I know I'm talking along. I'm not the pastor of this church. I can talk all I want. What do you care? Jerry Giles one Sunday was sitting out in the congregation, a strong layman in the church at the time. And I was preaching whatever I was preaching, and I looked out at Jerry, and I just kept looking at Jerry throughout the sermon. And at the end of the service, he walked up to me and he said, "I need to talk to you." And I said, "I know you need to talk to me." And he said, "You do?" And I said, "Yeah, you feel a call to ministry. I saw it today as you were sitting there. Jerry Giles is on staff here as the executive pastor in this church, a call to ministry at Marvin United Methodist Church." Jonathan and Kara Story, Carrie up here singing, that's familiar to me, you all. My organist at Central United Methodist Church in Fayetteville, Arkansas, was Jonathan Story. Did you all know that? And so I talked about Marvin a lot when I was up there, and then Doug called me one day and said, "There's a guy that's applied for the job." I was surprised Jonathan would leave Northwest Arkansas. You all, he's a celebrity. I'm not kidding you. He's a celebrity in Northwest Arkansas. He was this kid prodigy, and he's in, he's still a kid. And then one last person, Froda Gunderson. Oh, Lord have mercy. Have y'all seen Froda lately? You remember Froda, right? You know, he is a bodybuilder and power lifter. Froda left our house this morning. He came down to Houston, stayed with us a couple of days, and went to see some other friends. That guy is so buff, it's unreal. I mean, have you seen him? I mean, it's like, he walks around like this. He can't lift his arms anymore, but he is buff, I'm telling you. So as I think about Marvin, I think about the people, I think about the history, all of that housed in what we call these facilities, Marvin United Methodist Church. There has been so much good that has been proclaimed, so much good that has been achieved, so many lives that have been affected within the walls of this holy place. It is extraordinary to think about. The greatest work any human being can ever do on planet Earth has been done in this church, in these facilities, time and time again. Over and over again, lives have been changed. The kingdom of God has been presented to people. The gospel has been preached, and you all have been a part of that, and that is a long, rich history. People before us, people after us, our generation that has done so much good, and this church has to be here. It has to be here for the sake of the kingdom of God and for Tyler, Texas, until Christ returns, whenever that happens to be. In the meantime, this church has to continue doing what it needs to do, and you've got to have the facilities and the capability and the staff and all that to continue to make that happen. Who we are defines what we have, and what we have often defines who we are. And if you think about that in the life of the church, who we are defines what we have. You have to have the kind of facilities to be able to do the work that needs to be done, to be able to achieve the things that need to be accomplished along the way. And this church is blessed to have so much of that. So if you're saving for a rainy day, then your responsibility and obligation in so many different ways is to make sure that you play a role in that process. This is not an effort that should be done by a handful of people. Like human beings, facilities get older. We just saw that. They're in need of repair. I'm 55 years old now. I was 49 when I left. I've had a knee operation, and I have had 2 titanium discs put in my neck since I left here. That's what happens to us when we get older. Things aren't what they used to be. Dadgummit, Doug Baker is just like he was, which makes me mad, but the rest of us, we're just not what we used to be. I mean, that happens when things age and you get older, and facilities are no different from that. And just like a human being, we want to care for ourselves. We want to take care of ourselves. We want to eat right. We want to exercise. We want to be careful to make sure that we're around for the long haul. The same has to be done. You have an obligation. You have a responsibility. You have a mandate from God to maintain these facilities. There are people who were here long before you who did that. And we are the beneficiaries of all the work that was done long before we were around. And it's our responsibility to carry on that obligation to the next generation so that the gospel is proclaimed, lives are changed, all the great work is done through the life of this church. I've been in Houston now. I'm in my 4th year at Memorial Drive. So we had Hurricane Harvey a couple of years ago. I get nervous every time we have on the news every day. They have Eye on the Tropics, and they show the Atlantic Ocean. There could possibly be something. I have PTSD over that, and I'm not trying to be funny. It was terrible. We had almost 500 families in our families, not individuals, 500 families in our church whose houses flooded. And when I say flooded, I don't mean like they had water to their ankle. We're talking about 8-10 feet of water. Putrid sewage water for weeks on end. We lived one street over. Our house, thank God, did not flood. One street over, houses flooded. Church flooded. My church. We have 2 campuses. So what we call the West Campus did not flood. So immediately, we became a place for people in the community. There's a lot of affluence around us. There's a big country club around us. There are a lot of people with a lot of money who a week earlier are deciding, should I play golf today or should I play tennis, who are now coming to our church saying, you got any underwear? How about a toothbrush? Any toilet paper? You got feminine items? I mean, they needed everything. And what we heard over and over again is, thank God for the church. The first thing we thought about when we had a need was the church, Memorial Drive. And the vast majority of these people are not members of our church. I mean, we had a lot of people in the church we obviously assisted. But so many, we received hundreds of thousands of dollars from people in the community and even in our own church to provide for the needs. We still have people who have not moved back into the house, and it's 2 years later. And so what I'm saying is that the church oftentimes for people is the first thing they think about when there's a crisis. Whether or not they're a member of a church makes no difference. Whether or not they're members of a respective congregation called Marvin doesn't make any difference. I promise you, if there is a catastrophe of any kind, this place will be inundated with people because we are the church. So to be the church means to do what Christ calls us to do. And we have to have the facilities and the capability to make that happen and to do it for generation after generation after generation. That's why it's incredibly important to save for a rainy day, to do the work that needs to be done. It is not sexy. It's not appealing. When you say to a church, look, we're going to build a family life center, or we're going to build a new sanctuary, or whatever it may be, people get excited about that. They can see it, they can touch it, they can smell it, they can taste it, all those kinds of things. When you tell people, all kidding aside, we need to put in new plumbing, or we've got to put in a new HVAC, that's not appealing to people. That's not something you're going to put your name on. But if you don't have that, you don't have the whole picture. And things are going to crumble all around you. You got to repair a roof. You got to do all those kind of things. Did you notice none of that stuff happened when I was here? It's like looking at that going, the roof was perfect when I was a pastor of this church. It just shows you. So you give because it's your responsibility. Let me tell you a quick story, because I tell a lot of stories. So this past year at Memorial Drive, at the end of the year, we were $500,000 short on our budget to meet the budget for the year. $500,000, that's a lot of money. So I had to get up. We had this dinner at the very beginning of the year. It was the day before we were closing the books on 2018. We We had this big dinner, top 100 givers in the church, and I got up and said, you all, we missed it by $500,000. This church has missed it on numerous occasions, but we're going to tell you from now on that we missed it, and we need to do something about it. We're not going to take money out of this fund over here. We're not going to do anything but tell you the truth. We missed it by $500,000. And so we're going to have to do some things to drastically change the budget we just implemented a few days ago. And we're going to have to cut staff, and we're going to have to trim back in all kinds of ways. We had the dinner. People came up, thanks for being transparent, thanks for telling the truth, etc. I was just so down. Susan was with our grandson in Hawaii while I was dealing with all this horrible stuff. Susan was in Hawaii on the beach having a good time. But I was really down, and the next day I had Bible study. I had 2 Bible studies. One was in the morning. It was in the morning Bible study. I go back to my office, and I have a message on my phone. I look down. It's a guy in the church. I thought, I'll call him before I go home for lunch. So I called him, and he said, hey, John, I was at the dinner last night. I said, I saw you. This is a guy in the church. It's a generous giver, but never really stood out in any way in terms of his giving or anything else. And he said, yeah, listen, I'd like to make up the difference. We're closing the books today, right? And I said, yeah. I said, I don't think you evidently heard correctly. We're $500,000 short. And he said, yeah, listen, I'll be up there in a few minutes. I'm going to drop off a check at the front desk. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, my church, my responsibility. I have the money. I have to do it. This is not my money. It's the church's money. I'm bringing up a check. He brought up a check, sat it down on the table where the receptionist is, and left. $500,000 check. I hugged it and put it on my face and kissed it. And I wasn't there. He told me he was coming that afternoon. I went home for lunch. He did it while I was at lunch. So I called him and said, I'm sorry I missed you. I would have hugged you, and I cannot tell you, I just can't imagine what a blessing it is to be able to do something like that. And he said, you cannot imagine, John. It's the greatest thing I could do. It's my church, my responsibility. And I think that's what really the eternal flame is all about. Your church, your responsibility. Every single person in this room has an obligation and responsibility to make sure that everything here is maintained. Again, sometimes we just have to say, this is not the most exciting thing we have to do, but we got to put in a new air conditioning system in, or we have to put on a new roof, or we have to seal the brick, or whatever it may be. It has to be done. You all, it is incredibly important to the future of this church. It's your church. It's your responsibility. End of story for everybody. When I was the pastor at Marvin United Methodist Church in Tyler, Texas, we were going to refurbish a large worship space. Has a name on it, the building. Don't want to embarrass anybody, but I went to see someone whose name was on the building. And I said, I would like for you to give a lead gift for the refurbishment of this space. You know what I'm talking about. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. If you went to the church and asked for that money, how much of the money could you get? I said, well, if I went to the church and asked for the money, we'd get all the money. But your name's on the building. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you half of it. I said, oh, that's incredible. That's a great lead gift. We already have half the money. That means all I have to do is raise the other half. That's incredible. So I went home that night. I was so excited. The next morning I got to the office early, and I looked down, and I had a voicemail. This is before 8 o'clock in the morning from this person. Call me right away. I thought, oh, Lord, what happened? So I called him, and he said, I've been up all night long because of you. And I thought, oh, dear God. He said, you said my name was on the building. I said, yes, sir, your name's on the building. He said, then I have to pay for the whole thing. Can you come by and get a check? I said, no, I'm a little busy right now. I promise you this is a true story. So I went over there, had a check for the entire amount, and I had a truck then. I put a seatbelt around that check and drove back to the church. That's true. I drove like Mr. Magoo. I walked in with that check. I'd never held a check for that kind of money. You know what he said? My name's on the building. I have to pay for it. Your name is all over this place. For every one of you. Your name is all over this building. It's on the roof. It's in the brick. It's in the bathroom. It's in Horton Place. It's in the sanctuary. It's in Hurt Auditorium. It's in Purtle Hall. It's in Fair Gymnasium. It's all over this place. It's in the parking lot. Your name is on this place. And if your name is on this place, what obligation do you have? You have to pay for it. It doesn't, and when you pay for it, it doesn't affect your giving to the budget. Now, you all, I can say all this, and I'm going to say it all. I'm old now. I say all kinds of, my dad says stuff, and I think, how do you say that without somebody getting so angry or shooting you? And he said, I'm old. I can do whatever his words, I can do whatever the hell I want. Well, guess what? I'm old too. So I'm telling you, your giving should never affect how you do ministry in this church. It's not going to do any good to be like a cathedral in England where you have this incredible facility and 10 people coming on Sunday morning. You want to fill this place so that more names are written on this building, and more names are written on this building. Your name is on this building. You have an obligation. You have a responsibility to pay for it. When I was in Arkansas, we were doing a capital campaign to refurbish a contemporary space, to update several other places, to start a second campus in an old church that we were going to refurbish, close down, refurbish, and then reopen as a part of our congregation. We did all that stuff. It cost several $1 million. And there was a man in the church who has since died, barely older than I am, who grew up his whole life as a non-Christian, never been in church in his life till he was about 50 years old. Never been in a church. CFO of a major multi-billion-dollar company in Northwest Arkansas. CFO. He was in the church, and when we were doing this campaign, he didn't turn in a pledge. And I said something to him. He said, don't worry about it. I said, okay. I'm worried about it, but if you don't want me to worry about it, I won't worry about it. But I'm worried about it. So when he turned in his pledge card, it was for more than the entire amount of the whole campaign, just his pledge, which enabled us to do a lot of things that we dreamed about doing. We tore down the Wesley Foundation at the University of Arkansas, took on that ministry as a part of us, and built an entire building. It's a state-of-the-art, incredible building on the campus of the University of Arkansas because we had all this extra money to do all this. And I said to him, I'm so impressed that you would do this. And this is what he said. I wrote it down so I could remember it because I want to say it the way he said it because I wrote it down when he said it to me. Referring to the church, the structure, this is where I found Jesus Christ. This is where my life has been changed. John, I have to do this. He died a year later. Fulfilled the obligation in its entirety. And my understanding is they've done another capital campaign since then. Frode Gunderson is the minister of music in that church. And his family gave the largest gift to the next campaign because this is where he found Jesus Christ. I have to do this. I think one of the things that's so great for Susan and me tonight is to be here and to just be nostalgic for a while and come back and look around. I mean, we went to South Tyler. It's like, what happened? Last thing I remember on Broadway was Academy of Sports and Outdoors or whatever it was, or Gander Mountain or something out there, and it's like, good night, what happened around here? But a lot of Tyler still looks like the Tyler I knew. And driving by Marvin, it's like, that's Marvin. That is Marvin. And what's great about Marvin looking like Marvin's looked like is everybody can say that. It is the focal point. It is the center point. It is where people find Jesus Christ. Their names are written all over the walls of this place. And for those people, they have to do this. It is a lot of money to put new roofs all over this place. It's a lot of money. The most beautiful stained glass windows in the state of Texas are at Marvin United Methodist Church. Those are breathtaking. They cost a lot of money. I said today, Doug, how much, we went in the sanctuary earlier today. I just had to go back in the sanctuary. How much did this refurbishment on these windows cost? I'm thinking $12,000, $14,000. That's a lot of money. He said $1.2 million. I said, what? Again, those windows were pristine when I was here. We didn't have, I mean, you think about all that. I mean, it costs a lot of money, but your name is written on this place. This is who you are. What you have defines who you are. Who you are defines what you have. And you have Marvin United Methodist Church, this extraordinary resource available to you. Please do what you need to do. So what will you do? What will you give? This old girl needs a lot of work, but she is more than worth it, you all. Your name is on this place forever. And I promise you this, your money could never be more well spent than through the mission and ministry of Marvin United Methodist Church and maintaining these extraordinarily beautiful, wonderful, tremendous facilities. You have the leadership in place, you have the facilities. Please, whatever you do, make sure this is the central place in which people can find Jesus Christ so they can write their names all over this place as well. I'm privileged and honored to be here tonight. You all, I cannot tell you how thrilled I am, and Susan is as well, to come back. I hope one of these days I'll be able to come back again and look at everything around here and go, I see your name on the wall, I see your name on the wall, I see your name on the wall. I'm telling you, my name's on the wall, and I'm grateful for that. My last Sunday here, I said, there's one thing that nobody can ever take away from me, ever. I can say for the rest of my life that at one point in time, I was the senior pastor of Marvin United Methodist Church. I still live with that great pride. Thank you all for the evening. God bless you.